Welcome to the AT&T teleconferencing service. Enter your access. Enter your attendee ID number followed by pound. If you do not know your attendee number, press. Your line has been muted. Press star 6 to unmute your own line.
Good morning, everybody. Morning.
Morning.
Okay, good morning. Okay, obviously, there is once again a ton of news going on this morning. Thank you to everybody who was involved in last night's coverage of the debate. Once again, I thought we did an excellent job covering all the storylines. But there is even more news since then. Begin with provincial debate news and the vice presidential recap. David Challey.
Good morning, Jeff. So this unprecedented coronavirus campaign season continues to prove itself so. As you know, less than 2 hours ago, the Commission on Presidential Debates announced that the second presidential debate, scheduled for a week from today in Miami, a town hall debate, will have the candidates in remote locations. That is, if the candidates were to participate in the debate. Obviously, you know, we shouldn't consider this that the commission is putting the debate on Zoom. I know the president in his remarks this morning said behind a computer, but obviously remote locations doesn't necessarily mean through a computer. Nonetheless, the commission told CNN this morning in Day America's reporting, we did not consult them, referring to the campaigns, and that it was supported, the decision was theirs and supported by the Cleveland Clinic. That is backed up by both campaigns, who said this was a unilateral CPD decision, and they learned of it this morning, as we were all learning of it this morning. You saw that Donald Trump said that he's not going to be participating in any virtual debate. You saw that his campaign put out a statement in the name of Bill Stepien saying that they are going to hold a rally instead. Kate Bedingfield put out a statement on behalf of the Biden campaign saying that the former vice president looks forward to speaking directly to the American people and contrasting his plans and his record and his approach to build back better with Donald Trump's record. It is important, I think, you know, there's only one candidate right now that needs this debate, right? And it's not the one who's leading nationally by double digits in every reputable poll that's been out in the last week. It is worth noting here that at the moment, we'll see how this continues to play out, but at the moment, the Biden camp is getting absolutely everything they wanted here, right? I mean, Biden made clear in his comments the other day, obviously a key indication to the commission, that he wasn't going to debate if the president was still had coronavirus, or that the science didn't dictate here, making clear that the CPD was going to need to get its act together around the health and safety concerns that were clearly present on the stage last night, and we'll get to that in a moment. It's Donald Trump that's bailing on the debate, so they don't get to be in any position of blame for it. They stand willing and ready to debate. It's not the rules or wanting to enforce the rules or a debate about how the last debate went. It's all coronavirus related. So this is going exactly according to how the Biden campaign would like it to go right now. And as I mentioned, they're not the ones that need the debate. Right? A debate for a frontrunner like this represents mostly just risk, unnecessary risk from their point of view. I would also note this is going to make Democrats rejoice in many ways, because if you look at our instant poll results last night among debate watchers, the party split on what they wanted to see for the October 15th debate. Two-thirds of Trump supporters wanted to see an in-person debate, but it was the exact opposite for Biden supporters. So this will be met with great comfort by Democrats. So across the board, I would just say in the strategy around all of this, this plays into exactly how the Biden campaign would have scripted it. And I think that's it on the presidential debate announcement for next week. The commission also noted in Dan America's reporting, it's not unprecedented for a candidate to decline a debate invitation. They noted that Jimmy Carter did so for the first debate in 1980, but did participate in the second debate. As for the vice presidential debate last night in Utah, I think it's pretty clear that there was no sort of needle-moving kind of event in that debate last night. You saw a far more civil affair than you had seen the previous week in the presidential debate, obviously. But you saw, again, physically on that stage with the plexiglass and front and center as the topic, the impossible task for Mike Pence to defend the administration's handling of coronavirus, which is obviously the issue before every single voter right now. It was quite clear in that debate, you can't spin a virus. You can't put a positive spin on that with more than 210,000 Americans dead from the virus. So as much as he tried, you saw that struggle. Now, he was able to get to sort of more comfortable, consistent, conservative issue points on the economy, on fracking, on taxes that allowed Republicans to breathe a sigh of relief. You hear many Republicans saying it looks like maybe this could help slow the bleeding. Again, if you look at our instant poll results, a majority said their vote is not impacted by this. I don't think it's going to have a dramatic impact on the race itself. I do think there are a couple of lingering storylines out of it. Obviously, I think there are two key questions that Pence just dodged entirely that still deserve examination. One, on that super spreader event of Amy Coney Barrett's nomination in the Rose Garden, and how he was asked about that, and he just dismissed it entirely, would not engage on that notion of COVID at the White House, which has obviously been dominating for the last week now, and so he just refused to engage on that in any intellectually honest way, and left that dangling. And then this question of the peaceful transfer of power again. Obviously, no candidate wants to engage in a hypothetical about losing, and so Mike Pence sort of pivoted away from that and said there won't be a transfer of power, but completely dodged the actual question that Susan Page had posed to him on that. For Kamala Harris's part, who obviously had a strong debate performance, the instant poll showed her the winner last night. Her favorables improved among debate watchers, but she left lingering this question again, as her running mate Joe Biden has, on the court packing issue. They do not want to engage on this. They understand it's unpopular broadly, popular with the base, puts them in a position they don't want to be in, and so they keep punting on it or trying to reframe it. But obviously, that question will continue to dog the Democratic ticket as time marches on. I think the other sort of component to last night that may be worthy of conversation today too is just sort of the theatrics of it, and Harris's use of speaking and what that means to be interrupted by a man, and how she went back to that and used that time and again. That clearly resonated out in the audience. And again, the gender gap that we see in this race overall, the power of the female vote that is the life force behind Joe Biden's candidacy in many ways right now, was on display in our flash poll of debate watchers too. I mean, just overwhelmingly female debate watchers said Harris won the debate, whereas male debate watchers sort of split it between Harris and Pence. And I think moments like that get at why. So that's probably worthy of day two sort of follow-on conversation as well out of the debate. As for today on the trail, Jeff, it's a rare moment when we see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually together. That doesn't happen much. They will be in Arizona together today. We'll see if Biden talks to reporters. He may have done so before, just as we were getting on this call, before he gets on the plane in Delaware and flies to Arizona. So in addition to the Bedingfield statement, perhaps we'll have him answer a question on camera about the CPD decision. But at 4:25 p.m. Eastern, I believe it is, we will see Biden and Harris together for the first time doing a Native American event. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern, they're going to kick off a Soul of the Nation bus tour. You remember Biden did a lot of those in the lead up to Iowa and New Hampshire as well. They're going to kick off that for a few stops in battleground Arizona today. And just to give you a sense of how battlegroundy that state is, Mike Pence is also going to be in Arizona today after a quick stop in Nevada. So you've got all those folks in Arizona today on the campaign trail. We have Arlette Saenz out there with the Biden-Harris ticket, and Ryan Nobles will be there with Pence. And just one final note about Arizona, you know, there's that incredibly hot Senate race between Kelly and McSally. We talked about yesterday on this call a little bit. Miguel Marquez has a piece looking at that, which is obviously critical to the map of control of the United States Senate. So we have that going today as well. And I think that is where we start.
Okay, David, thank you very much. So before we move to Trump and the rest of the news, does anybody have any thoughts on the debate, either presidential and what's going to happen there, or last night's vice presidential debate? Okay, not hearing anything. I will move to Washington and a recap of Trump's been out talking for almost an hour this morning, and the rest of the Washington stories. Virginia?
Okay, so in terms of what he said this way, as you said, he talked for an hour. I think that the two highlights of this are, first of all, he appears to be blaming this Gold Star family event for where he got it, which he had alluded to on Hannity, but seemed to put a finer point on it today. And then just this attack on Kamala Harris as totally unlikable, calling her a monster, and multiple times calling her a communist. So other than that, just to tick through some of the other highlights, he says that he doesn't believe he's contagious, wants to resume rallies. He is the perfect physical specimen. He said that the aid talks that he pulled the plug on 2 days ago are now starting to work out. He said that Eli Lilly and Regeneron would get FDA emergency approval but did not provide details, doesn't believe the polls. Should Don Jr. run for New York City mayor? I hope not. On Barr, he repeated he will either go down as the greatest attorney general or a very sad situation. He attacked Ray again. I don't want to say that yet. He was asked about whether he'd get rid of him. He's been a disappointing guy. He talks about, even the voting thing. He doesn't see the voting ballots as a problem. He again claims to have tremendous Black community support, and then touts the killing of names bigger than Osama bin Laden. So I'm sure there was more, but those were the big highlights. This all comes a day after he released this tape calling his getting COVID a blessing from God. And as we have more COVID in D.C., another top Marine official and the head of the security office who contracted in September, and just he was on a different timeline, but and wasn't part of this latest outbreak, but obviously another person in the White House orbit. There is reporting out there that 34 people have been connected to it in the White House. We're just trying to sort of get those numbers sorted. There is also reporting that Trump asked Walter Reed doctors to sign an NDA in 2019 when he went to Walter Reed, and we're working on that. And then this incredible story about Meadows hosting a wedding in Atlanta in May for 70 people, this lavish wedding at a time that the rules were that you could only have gatherings of 10 people. So I think that's the big COVID part of Washington.
Okay, so let me just jump in before we open it up on that. I do think that by the way, just as an aside, that the NDA story at the 2019 visit to Walter Reed is a really good story. NBC News broke that, and to the degree we can match it, I think it would be helpful. I just want to add a couple of observations from the Trump interview. He also basically predicted that Joe Biden was going to die 2 months into office. He said he won't last 2 months in office. I thought that the most un-American thing that he did in the entire ridiculous interview was to call Kamala Harris beyond unlikable and a monster, but to call her several times a communist. I mean, it's Joe McCarthy, and it's just beyond un-American. He blasted, as you said, he blasted Bill Barr, Mike Pompeo, and Chris Wray, all for different reasons. Barr for not indicting Trump's political enemies, Wray because of the voting warnings, and Mike Pompeo for not finding Hillary's emails within the State Department. So he basically blasted three of his top administration officials. This idea that he's completely done a complete turn on the stimulus talks and that they're now back on is just truly amazing. And I agree entirely that he is completely trying to suggest that he got COVID at the Gold Star family event rather than the Supreme Court event, so that it looks like it was in the support of protecting and honoring the Gold Star family. So we should note that. Let's open it up for any thoughts on Trump and COVID.
I would add to that he has a history with Gold families. We all remember what he did to the Khan family and what he's done to other families, including the McCain family and the Biden family. Anytime someone talks about their military service, it's obviously set something off in him that he feels he needs to go on the attack. And there's a whole long history of him with that community.
Other thoughts?
Jeff, just as we talk about Trump in the debate, we should not assume that he's not doing this debate. As David said, he needs the debate. Biden doesn't. He flip-flopped in 24 hours on the stimulus, and so he very well could do the debate remotely, despite what he said this morning. And of course, it's worth noting it wouldn't be the first presidential debate that was done remotely. The third Kennedy-Nixon debate was done remotely. So as we frame this, anything could happen, and it's entirely possible he'll do a 180 again by the end of the day or tomorrow.
Yep. Thank you, Sam. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard that he said he was a perfect physical specimen, I mean, other than it being laughable, it was really kind of disturbing because for some reason it just brought to mind like the Aryan race and how, they purported to be this like perfect race, and somehow it's a suggestion that those who get COVID and don't recover well are somehow to blame or somehow inferior. And that's just sort of how it struck me, and it was very disturbing.
It's Ben. The other thing about that as well, that sentence where he said, I'm the perfect physical specimen, I'm extremely young, which, he didn't laugh when he said it. We know it's not true. He said, I don't have heart problems. We know that's not true. And then the really interesting thing I thought was he said, I don't have diabetes or any of the problems you heard about, which leads me to ask and wonder, does he have diabetes? And I think we should put that very simple, straightforward question to the White House. That would put him at much higher risk for severe disease if he did get coronavirus. And then just highlighting one other comment from his interview this morning, saying, all the treatments made me better. We don't know that. You don't really need drugs. Nearly 212,000 Americans not all of them, but a substantial portion of them, I would argue, would still be alive if they did have the drugs that he had access to. So just some wild comments in the interview this morning.
Yep.
I want to add in on this monster thing because we're having a debate. In digital, we have a policy of not putting insults in our headlines, so we won't put the monster comment in our headlines. But I don't think we won't do that. But I don't want to back away from the President of the United States calling the first African American and South Asian woman to debate on this presidential debate stage a monster. I don't think this is powerful because he's president. It's powerful because he has a problem with women, to put it lightly, in his election bid. And I still want to shy away from the ugliness of that. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think we should let the world know what he's doing. It's quite extraordinary, even for him.
Okay. Thank you, Marcus.
I think that Marcus is right, and that it cannot be overdone or overemphasized that everything coming out of his mouth is beyond ugly, from trying to get his last opponent arrested to the former president arrested to trying to get his current opponent arrested. All of it is insanity, and it's all part of the complete and utter collapse of anything he has left to say or do here. It's really outrageous how far he's going, and people should just point out it's complete desperation, and he will say anything.
I actually, well, hold on one second. I actually completely agree with Jim Murphy. Not a sentence I say a lot, but I completely agree with Jim that we can't just treat this as and to Marcus's point, we can't just treat this as, oh, he's just saying things again. What he is saying and asking for is really beyond even the rantings of a desperate person. It is outrageous, and I think we want to tiptoe too much around this. It is really, really over the line. I'm sorry, I cut somebody off. Whoever wanted to.
No, it was just me. The other thing I just wanted to point out on the Fox Punch, she had him for an hour and never asked when his last negative test was, nor what those was.
Well, look, that interview is a whole separate issue. The media team is working on, the complete shill that Maria Bartiromo was. So that's a complete separate issue. I agree. Other thoughts? I want to reiterate. Go ahead.
I just think we really should zero in on him saying he's not infected anymore. He's walking around the West Wing. Plenty of his people have been infected. And it's like he's a dangerous super spreader on his own. And our doctors, I think we're probably already doing it, but I just think we can't do enough about him telling American people that as soon as you get it and you have some drugs, then you're fine and you're not infected anymore.
Yeah. So look, I think that goes to the whole. I think that goes to the whole point that Jim Murphy brought up, which is that he's in complete denial about COVID and how you get it, how you deal with it, how it affects you, and he is just saying things that are beyond the pale. And I know there's a lot of speculation that it could be the result of drugs that he's on and stuff like that. I think we don't even need to go there. I think we just point out what he's saying and call it out for what it is. So again, I want to say for the record, I completely agree with Jim Murphy. Does anybody have any other thoughts?
Jeff, yeah, Adam, if I could.
Oh. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Brianna. Oh, go ahead, Brianna.
Oh, I was just going to say, just really quickly on the Gold Star family thing, I think it's really illuminating about how he sees just the coronavirus and how self-centered he is on it. I mean, to blame them for bringing it, which obviously we don't even know if that's the case, when the truth is he should be blamed for having an event that would expose people who've the reason they're being recognized is because of the loss that they've already experienced. I mean, imagine worst case scenario of that tearing through that event, and just families that have already been devastated could have been further devastated. It's just, it's incredibly cruel.
And then the way his thinking is oriented about it is to blame them for bringing it when they were invited, obviously. It just, to me, is very, I think it's very upsetting from the perspective of probably some Gold Star families, and then probably some aren't going to care because this also is the time where, they had a huge success in the last defense authorization. They had a huge benefits gap that was closed, that they've been fighting for decades to close. And so that's something that, they can point to saying this administration has helped them.
If only you had a show to point all that out. Thank you for that, Brianna. Anyone else?
Jeff, it's Adam. I was just going to add to what Jim said, because it's not just desperate talk. He runs a government that has proven itself to enable his worst tendencies. And it's never clear how much of what he's ranting about is turned into actual action by his various cabinet officials and department. It's something we got to watch for, but I think it's something to remind people. This isn't just talk at this point.
Right, which is why what he said about Barr and Pompeo and Ray was really important. Any final thoughts on this? Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, it's Antoine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
The accountability to the White House press corps, I think we need to keep noting that today. The fact that this president is not taking questions from a press corps that has legitimate questions versus the forum he chose this morning.
Well, I'm always all for that. I agree with you. Anyone else? Okay, is there anything else in Washington?
No, just the new voting numbers that Pam released last night. So, and she's working on reporting today about how the Trump team is trying to hit behind the scenes, get Trump to back off on all what he's saying publicly because it's hurting them. So that will be in her wrap today, and I think that's it.
Okay. Let's move to COVID and domestic.
Hey, Jeff.
Please. Yes, sir.
Hey, Jeff. Can I just add one thing on that front, what Virginia just said, because it relates to what Adam said about what the Justice Department did to change the election investigation abilities of the Justice Department, that memo that was written so that they can now look into so-called election fraud in advance of the election. And I think that goes to what Adam said about, some of the stuff he says is just bluster and other stuff. Are they actually doing it? The fact is the Justice Department has changed a law or a rule or a guideline. I guess it's a guideline, it's not a law. A guideline that they've had not to initiate investigations into elections in advance of the election. And now they are able to do that based on the memo that was written and sent to prosecutors. So I think this is a good example of what Adam was talking about. And we didn't really get to it too much. It's part of our voting coverage, but I think it's a bigger deal than probably has had, or it needs more attention than it's so far got.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, it's John Avalon. Following on that, there was a statement yesterday by William Ivania in the Intel. He's a director of counterintelligence in some level, but he said for the first time that there's evidence of foreign actors trying to infiltrate our election systems. And that is a subtle but important shift from what he'd said and the administration has said just a few weeks ago. So I wonder if that's something we want to keep an eye on. And secondarily, on just the general delusion of Trump and lashing out at allies and accelerating his attacks, as we saw with the McSally debate, I wonder how many Republicans, now that they're really getting creamed, even the most sycophantic of them, are going to try to create some distance between them and Donald Trump. I think that's something for us to watch because it becomes increasingly difficult to defend if you're in a tight race.
Yeah, so look, I think that's a really good story. And to David Chalian, I think that we should put one of our national political reporters on the Republican, exactly what John just outlined, the Republicans in tight races and how Republicans are dealing with the current landscape nationally vis-a-vis Trump. I think that's a good story for us, and I'd like to do that.
Great.
Anybody else before we move to COVID and domestic? Matthew, all yours.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Overall, on COVID, the signs of increases are showing up more broadly each day now across America. Almost no states with declining case numbers week to week. The national average of cases is at its highest level in 6 weeks. And on the CNN map, only 2 green or declining states, the rest up or steady. And as we've been emphasizing, it's really not about one hot area right now. The problems are really scattered all over the map. A higher number day yesterday, over 50,000 new cases, 915 new deaths reported, hospitalizations still nationally flat or slightly up for a month now, so that's not good. Today brings new restrictions and, of course, escalating protests in sections of America's largest city. New York City's cluster zone shutdowns are in effect as of this morning. Big news on 2 antibody therapies, Regeneron and Eli Lilly putting in for their emergency authorization. Trump just telling Fox Biz, quote, they're gonna get it. No comment so far from the FDA. We just reached out again. And with everything the president is saying and doing and not doing, just drawing attention again to this unprecedented editorial from the New England Journal of Medicine, breaking with hundreds of years of nonpartisanship, calling to vote out the current leadership, which it says has taken a crisis and turned it into a tragedy. In terms of key trends, key data points, key regions, many states in record territory or almost back to record territory in averages of new daily cases. We have 9 Midwestern or Western states at record levels: Kentucky, Indiana, Minnesota, Nebraska, North and South Dakota, Utah, Wisconsin, and Colorado. Again, all-time record averages in new cases. Michigan has come almost all the way back to the bad place, driving the daily average to near 0 in June and back up, averaging about 1,000 now. Wisconsin, which we've talked about so much in the last 2 weeks, sets a new record for hospitalizations after setting records for days in all categories, setting up a field hospital for overflow, enacting new restrictions on capacity at bars and restaurants and venues. Illinois, averaging over 2,000 cases a day, almost back to the high spring peak. And we've got Adrian Broadus in Chicago on the Midwestern line. The Northeast still rising. Spikes in New York, up 42% week to week, and increases in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Obviously, the crackdowns and the new protests in New York, the zone restrictions for at least 14 days. In the most severe red zones, all non-essential businesses will be closed, gatherings banned, severe limits on restaurants and venues. Alexandra Field in New York today, and we had a second big night of raucous and sometimes violent protests in Brooklyn as members of the Orthodox Jewish community without distancing or masks pushed back angrily, saying they're being unfairly targeted. The reporter with the Jewish Insider who says he was brutally assaulted by somebody in the crowd, and Shimon was up on this morning. Then in contrast, some states opening even further. Texas will allow bars to open for the first time since June, as well as higher capacities for other businesses. And almost 2 weeks after Florida fully reopened bars and restaurants and businesses, the data shows there is still no appreciable change in cases or hospitalizations or even positivity rate. All interesting. We will watch this a little longer. On the education front, 124 schools are part of the New York City rollbacks in the cluster zones we talked about, returning to online learning as parents scramble for a new plan. And then in Boston, the next phase was supposed to start in a week for in-person learning, but the mayor pushes it back another week. And Bianca can be on the education front today. On vaccines and treatments and health headlines, we'll get a vaccine update when Azar gives an Operation Warp Speed talk to an event in about 15 minutes. And then, of course, the antibody therapies we talked about at the top, now in the FDA's hands. Regeneron saying it currently has doses for 50,000 patients. We'll soon have 300,000. Eli Lilly guaranteeing many more. It says it'll have 1 million doses for mild to moderate cases. Sanjay and Jacqueline Howard available on the health front. A lot going on, again, with sports and COVID. The football season clearly not going as smoothly as the training camp season did. The league doctor says pausing the season is still on the table. ESPN and NFL Network reporting that some Titans members are under investigations for breaking workout rules. 2 more Titans players tested positive. There had been nearly 24 players and staff before. The Patriots had to cancel a practice. The Packers putting fan attendance on indefinite hold. So a lot going on there again. And then just this other interesting story from the world of culture. Saturday Night Live cancels its musical guest Morgan Wallen this week after he is seen in social videos partying maskless in Alabama, and Wallen posts an Instagram video saying his actions were short-sighted and he's tried to find joy in the wrong places. We've got the rap pieces today, or the rap piece today, which is Nick Watt. It's 3, 5, 7, and 9. I can pause there or go on with the message.
Okay, I'd like to pause there and just say that I think that, given we're so focused on what's going on with the White House, Trump, and the debates, we cannot lose sight of the terrible report that Matthew just gave. And by terrible report, I mean he did an excellent job of covering the tremendous problems that are once again all over the country. And I think these rap pieces in particular are really important. We cannot lose sight of what COVID is doing to the country. And I think a lot of those cultural moments that you talked about at the end, be it football, Saturday Night Live, or what's happening in the communities in Brooklyn, should also be all part of extended rap pieces. I think there is so much going on around COVID and how it is gripping the country. I do not want to lose sight of this, and so it is really important that we're covering that entire story. Does anybody else have any thoughts on COVID before we get to the rest of domestic? Okay, Matthew, the rest of domestic, please.
Okay, hurricane warnings are now up along the Gulf Coast for Delta. The key here is these are the same areas battered by Hurricane Laura 6 weeks later in the crosshairs again, and Brandon Miller has the quick forecast.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, Hurricane Delta is about 400 miles south of Cameron, Louisiana, which is the exact point where Hurricane Laura made landfall 6 weeks ago today. It's a Category 2, 100-mile-per-hour winds, and that is expected to increase today, as today is sort of a travel day for the storm over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So the big question today is how much can that intensity increase? It's expected to reach Category 3, which would be a major hurricane, and then the forecast calls for it to potentially weaken back down to Category 2 before landfall tomorrow afternoon, Friday afternoon to evening. Again, Southwest Louisiana, Lake Charles to be hit hard again. So many of those areas still with tarps on the roofs. They haven't recovered from Hurricane Laura. And so this will be deja vu all over again for them. A very big wind field from this storm. Hurricane force winds will stretch over 60 miles. It's a daytime storm, so pictures should be better than some of the other landfalls we've seen this year, which made landfall at night.
So we've got Martin Savage starting live this afternoon in Lake Charles. Others moving in later today for coverage tomorrow. Chad, Jennifer, and Tom Sater splitting up the day in the Weather Center. And then just a couple of other notes from our policing beat and race beat. In the Breonna Taylor case, the battle over the rest of the secret grand jury testimony taking center stage in court today. There's a 1 o'clock hearing on the anonymous grand juror's request to release everything presented. Of course, what we got last week was only a portion, and not the portion that involved what the attorney general told the grand jury about how to look at the case. Cameron filed a new motion yesterday to keep the rest of it secret, and we're going through all of this, and we can come up live if there's news out of that hearing. There's a 2:30 news conference with the family of Jonathan Price, the unarmed black man shot dead by a police officer in Wolf City, Texas, the officer charged with murder. Today is the first family meeting with prosecutors, a news conference scheduled afterwards. We've got Ed Lavandera covering that in Greenville, Texas. Keeping an eye out for more backlash from this decision in Wisconsin, where a DA declined to charge an officer for that February fatal shooting of 17-year-old Alvin Cole. And of course, this was the third time the officer was cleared in a fatal shooting. Omar's tracking that story and just working on more about the bail release of Derek Chauvin in the Floyd case, specifically who paid the $1 million bail. And I will leave it there.
Thank you, Matthew. Does anybody have any thoughts on any of those stories or anything else in domestic? International.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So just on COVID, our most dramatic lines continue to emerge out of Europe. Health officials in Germany are seeing what they call a worrying jump. This morning, cases are also flaring in Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia. So Fred Pleitgen has those lines. In the UK, Boris Johnson may be considering a circuit breaker lockdown, similar to Scotland. Really what that means is that actual COVID metrics and science versus politics would automatically trigger shutdowns. But there's mixed reaction to the idea because of the fears of economic damage from further lockdowns. So Salma has that. Delia has all the latest in Italy, where they're imposing mandatory face masks now. And then in France, authorities are triggering this emergency plan to help hospitals cope with their sharp increase in COVID patients in ICU. They've seen a 10% rise from 10 days ago there. So Melissa Bell has all those lines. In general, in Europe, it's just this story of this uptick in cases with governments struggling to maintain control. Just a couple of bits of other news. Veritas is live around her interview with Kamala Harris's uncle in Delhi. He said her historic appearance at the debate could inspire Black and Asian people to become politicians. And then just Max Foster speaking to Prince William, who launched a prize for environmental initiatives. He said the COVID crisis has awakened consciousness on the need to work together on this all. Other nets have pool sots, but Max was the only one who got like a 2-cam sit-down interview, so we've also got that in the mix. And that's where we start.
Thank you very much, Penny. It's clear that both the United States and Europe are dealing with this second wave, and I don't think we should shy away from calling it what it is. Business.
Jeff, good morning. Earlier we mentioned the president's desperation, and clearly the stalling economy contributing that, despite the rosy outlook from Pence last night on Fox. Moments ago, Larry Kudlow saying that the White House would like to have a COVID-19 aid by election, but not necessary for a recovery. That is no consolation to the million of Americans currently unemployed and scores of small businesses shuttered. And that's clearly on full display this morning as we continue to see historically high levels of layoffs each week. Here are the numbers. 840,000 filed for first-time unemployment benefits last week. Weekly jobless claims still 4 times higher than the pre-pandemic level. Continuing claims. These are people receiving benefits for 2 or more weeks, 10.9 million. The labor market continuing to flash signs of a slowdown as a lot of these layoffs become more permanent altogether. More than 25 million people are still getting some sort of jobless assistance. And the data fits into the pattern that we've been seeing. America's recovery from the pandemic clearly slowing down, as Romans has noted. The COVID recession eliminating 4 million jobs, tens of millions of Americans at risk of losing their homes, and more than 97,000 small businesses shuttered for good. 1 in 3 families with children do not have enough to eat. Kyung Law had an incredible piece on that earlier this week. And as Christine noted also this morning, we're seeing a recovery at the crossroads heading into an election and with the American worker under a lot of stress. She has been tracking that all day. And Jeff, I also want to mention Vanessa Yurkevich out with an eye-opening piece this morning on how veterans have been suffering amid the COVID recession. The unemployment rate for them, 2.8% at the end of 2019. But when the pandemic hit, that number more than quadrupled. She spoke to a vet who spent 21 and a half years in the military, walked away with traumatic brain injury, lost his house, and now living at a hotel. He was receiving that $600 in employment, but now without it, he and his girlfriend both relying on disability checks. Highly recommend that piece this morning, and she's up on that. And of course, as we mentioned, the economists, business leaders, and Fed Chair Jerome Powell this week warning of the risk of without further stimulus. As you and Sam mentioned, the president flip-flopping on stimulus on Fox Business, telling Marita Bartiromo that that negotiations were making headway after his stunning decision to shut it down earlier this week. Mattingly reporting that both Pelosi and Mnuchin spoke again yesterday on airline aid, and we'll talk again today at 10:45. We will be watching that, and they are up on that today. That is where we end on COVID. I could go on to one other item if we have the time.
Yeah, go ahead, please, Richard.
Yep. So in non-COVID news, Facebook announcing late yesterday it will remove content that urges Americans to report to the polls as unauthorized poll watchers if the content uses militarized language. So they are starting to move on that. They're also announcing political ads will be banned indefinitely after the polls close on November 3rd, and the company planning new steps to limit misinformation about the results. Brian Fung is up on that. And that's where we start.
Okay, thank you. So before we move to digital, is there anything anybody wants to bring up in any respect? Okay, digital.
We had 36.5 million uniques yesterday. Top story was the debate live story with an average consumption time of 9.5 minutes, which is huge. The Collinson piece, the Arizona Senate debate story, and rounded out our top three. The top video yesterday was also that Arizona clip, the distinct uncomfortableness of the Republican candidate talking about the president. Our top videos overnight on mobile web, it was Dana talking about Pence's extraordinary gall. On app, it was Daniel Dale talking about the lie of the night. And on desktop, it was Kamala Harris talking about Mr. Vice President, I am speaking. Right now, we have Trump says he won't go to the virtual debate at over 21,000. Number one on the site. Number two is the opinion roundup of who won last night and 2 minutes engagement time on that, which of course is high. Number three is actually the full video of the debate, which is doing super well. Of course, politics, the old debate, the next debate, we'll stay on top of, as well as our Biden reaching the 270 in the CNN Electoral College Outlook. Other politics we have coming is a K-file story on Amy Coney Barrett failing to disclose to the Senate her seminars helping anti-abortion rights groups. So that we'll stay on all the angles that we talked about. Wisconsin, we have a breakout on Wisconsin. Obviously, unrelenting march across the country. We have a piece on the Orthodox protests in Brooklyn. We also have a piece internationally looking at China in the contrast with the U.S., where hundreds of millions of people are now traveling. And then we have a piece coming from business on Regeneron share spikes in Regeneron and who benefited from those. On race and policing, we're all over the Breonna Taylor stuff. Of course, the George Floyd pressers today, the Johnson Price family presser today, Chauvin's bail and who paid it. And then we have an interview with the prosecutor who is no longer going to prosecute African Americans charged with resisting arrest because it is distinctly anti-African American charge. Finally, of course, we'll stay all over Hurricane Delta and those who are twice hit. Stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. John.
Just all the political and medical questions raised from the Trump interview this morning. Errol Lewis, Dana Bash, Douglas Brinkley, Laura Barrett Lopez. Does Trump skip the next debate at his own political peril, taking on Barr, Ray, and Pompeo, and then just all the stuff that he threw at Kamala, calling her a communist and a monster. We do have Carol Moseley Braun specifically on that. Sanjay Gupta next hour, as well as Dr. Megan Rainey coming up, and Amy Compton Phillips, just continuing to spread all this misinformation about COVID, calling Regeneron a cure, and questioning, saying that he's not even contagious anymore, and just what a dangerous notion that is, potentially putting other people at risk. Brian Stelter on the media angle, Fox Business, and Bartiromo giving Trump free rein to spread more lies and not challenging him at all. We'll continue to parse last night's VP debate. Jason Carroll stays in Utah with the highlights there, and then a big focus on Arizona. We get to Arlette Saenz, where both Biden and Harris, as well as Pence, all head to that swing state to get on the campaign trail. Shimon Prokopets and Alexander Field on the Orthodox backlash over restrictions, very strong pitchers. Adrian Broadus on the Midwest view, Wisconsin rollbacks going to effect today. Some of the other COVID headlines, the NFL and the Titans investigation, SNL canceling its musical guest, and Hawaii facing some real economic headwinds because of the tourism issues. They are looking at stopping the 14-day quarantine and just requiring tourists to take a test to prove they're negative before they come on in. So we want to hit that angle as well. On the economic side, Christine Romans and Julia Chatterley, the recovery slowdown. When you look at the jobless claims this morning, Manu Raju on Pelosi-Mnuchin meeting, is airline aid back on the table. Rihanna's going to do a step back on all the iconic brands that keep getting hit. Ruby Tuesday and Regal Cinemas just this week, but we're going to list all the ones over the past few months. The list is long and growing. The Vanessa Yurkovich piece on veterans that was just mentioned will air next hour. And on the international whips, it is going to be a sharp focus on all the issues in Europe. And finally, we are going to be doing Hurricane Delta every show. Chad Myers this morning on the tracking and timing, and we will get to Martin Savage this afternoon when he's up from Lake Charles.
Thank you, John. Washington.
Good morning. Today on the lead, the can't speak this morning, immunologist and whistleblower Rick Bright, who just quit over Trump's COVID response, joins us today. We can promote as soon as we tape it. We're going to go long multiple blocks and probably air it at 4, so we're excited about that. But we're going to pick up at 3. Caitlin is live at 3 and has a piece at 4. There's just so much to cover as we discussed on this call. Nick has our coronavirus wrap donut, and our docs today include Paul Offit and Craig Spencer. Pamela has our Warren voting donut. Jessica's reporting on Biden and Harris headed to the Arizona bus tour, and Miguel has that spot looking at the McSally-Kelly Senate race. Nia Malika Henderson and Ron Brownstein are with us as well, and we might want to get in something on the approaching hurricane if we have time.
And in the Situation Room, we'll obviously be following on all the threads coming out of this desperate Trump interview this morning. Trump saying that he won't debate virtually. Biden says he will, and all the other outrageous top lines mentioned. We'll continue to dig on his current condition as this outbreak continues to spread through the White House. We'll get into his blaming Gold Star families for his infection, the Harris communist attack, blasting Pompeo and Ray, the flip-flop on the stimulus as our job numbers are tanking. We have John Brennan booked today, so he'll be good on a lot of these threads. We also have Keisha Lance Bottoms, and we'll be sure to ask her about this wedding that Meadows threw for his daughter amid COVID restrictions. We'll obviously be watching these Biden-Harris events, which are happening near our showtime as we follow on last night's debate and some of that sound. We'll stay across all of the big picture threads with COVID as the whole country is essentially moving in the wrong direction, these resurges in a majority of states. So we'll get into all of those trends, as well as some of these cultural threads, what's going on with the NFL, the protests in Brooklyn, SNL. We'll put that all in our Nick Watt wrap piece, and then we have the Pam Brown War on Voting wrap piece, and that's where we're starting.
Thank you very much, Emily. Okay, that is a ton going on. Does anybody have any other thoughts they would like to bring up?
Hey, Jeff, it's Brandon from Weather and Climate. I just wanted to bring up last night the question that came up to Pence in the debate about hurricanes and whether or not climate change was making them stronger, wetter, slower. And he just, sort of completely dodged the question as he did most of the night, didn't answer it at all, but then finished with that hurricanes weren't becoming more frequent. And that is true, but that's about the only thing that scientists, believe that climate change isn't doing to the storms. And I think with this storm happening, Hurricane Delta is going to be the 4th storm to hit Louisiana this year. That's a record. All these records that we have, and all the stuff that we know and that science knows, it would be nice framing for, if we're talking to people in Louisiana, really what they believe. And it's also silly that we're even talking about climate change as a belief. It's not Santa Claus. It is science. It is a fact. It's happening. But I just wanted to flag that. And in reference to the current hurricane situation in Louisiana, I think it would be good.
I think those are good notes. We should not question the science at all. And I do think also your framing of this the fourth hurricane to hit Louisiana this year is also important framing as well. Other thoughts?
Just real quickly, Jeff, it's Ben, and sorry for everyone's kids who just had Christmas ruined by Brandon Miller. But just one other quick note on science this morning. A few people have sent me the article from MIT that Trump's antibody treatment was tested using cells originally derived from an abortion. Maggie Fox knows this topic better than perhaps anyone. She's about to have an alert out in the next couple minutes. Please look at the framing of that carefully. The treatment that Trump got was not directly derived from abortion cells, but it is very interesting that those treatments are derived from stem cells, which obviously are very closely linked. So we'll have that on in a couple minutes, and I would just encourage everyone to take a quick look at that. It's really smart and a really interesting angle of the conversation today.
Right. So let's be careful that we don't jump just somebody else wrote something that's not entirely accurate. So thank you for that reminder, Ben. Other thoughts?
Hey, Jeff, I just want to jump in on a bigger picture conversation that we could be having. It's so interesting how Abraham Lincoln is cited so many times by both sides. You know, last night Kamala Harris brought him up again in the context of the Supreme Court nomination, and Biden was at Gettysburg earlier this week. Trump has compared himself to Lincoln on multiple occasions, talking about what he's done for African Americans and no one since Lincoln, and I'm the best president, maybe with the exception of Lincoln, and maybe a question there, et cetera. And the fact is that the country right now is in a period, you know, we talked about how the debate is the most important maybe ever, the vice presidential debate, the election is incredibly important. But in fact, we're in probably the most important time in our country in this period right now since the time of Lincoln, in terms of the direction of the country on so many fronts, facing the pandemic, racial issues, and on and on and on. And I think we can elevate the conversation to that and use all of these examples of times when they've been bringing up President Lincoln for various reasons. But the fact is that Lincoln's shadow hangs over this as the president who carried the country through, you know, arguably the greatest crisis in its history in terms of preserving the Union. And I think we're at the most crucial point in the country's history since then. And I think we can have that conversation.
I think it's a great observation, a great note. Obviously, there are many people who could talk about Lincoln, but it's a really good framing and a good plug for next year's CNN original series on Lincoln. Anyone else? Okay, so I would just reemphasize that there is a ton going on. Let's stay very newsy. Let's stay urgent. Let's make sure we're covering this with our reporters, our analysts. There's no reason to be partisan here. There's so much news going on. Let's cover the news and stay urgent. And let's remember that in the midst of everything that's going on, COVID is surging in the United States. Let's not lose sight of that story. And the fourth hurricane to hit Louisiana about to come ashore as well. A ton going on. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.